the winter of 1996, a woman named Donna Rayleigh moved into a small rental house on the outskirts of Anchorage, Alaska. She was 31 years old, recently divorced, and had taken a job at a medical transcription firm that allowed her to work almost entirely from home. The house was affordable, quiet, and sat at the end of a gravel road flanked by black spruce trees so dense they swallowed the light by 3 in the afternoon. She had a dog, a large mixed breed named Colt, and she figured the two of them would manage the isolation just fine. She was wrong. The first sign came 2 weeks after she moved in. She had gone to bed around 11, leaving the kitchen light on as she always did, a habit from childhood she'd never shaken. At some point past midnight, she woke to Colt growling, not the playful, distracted growl he made at squirrels, but a low, sustained, chest-deep sound she had never heard from him before. He was standing at the bedroom window, stiff-legged, the fur along his spine risen in a hard ridge. Donna lay still and listened. The wind moved through the spruce trees. Ice ticked against the glass. Then she heard it, the slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps in the snow outside her window, moving from left to right, unhurried, as though whoever was out there had nowhere pressing to be. She called out, no answer. She grabbed her phone and called the police, who sent a car out 40 minutes later. The officers found tracks in the snow, a man's boot print, large, circling the house twice before disappearing into the tree line. They told her it was probably a neighbor cutting through the property, maybe a hunter. They told her to lock her doors. She already had. Over the following weeks, the visits became a routine she came to dread the way one dreads a recurring nightmare. Not every night, that was what made it worse. Some nights nothing happened and she would lie awake listening so hard her ears rang, almost wishing he would just appear so she could stop waiting. Other nights, Colt would begin his low growl and she would know. The footsteps always came to the bedroom window first. Sometimes they stopped there for a long time. She started sleeping with every light in the house on. She told her landlord, who shrugged and suggested deer. She told her coworkers, who suggested a security camera. She ordered one online, and while waiting for it to arrive, she began keeping a journal of dates and times, trying to establish a pattern. There was none. He came on Tuesdays and on Saturdays. He came on random Wednesdays. Once he came 3 nights in a row and then disappeared for 2 weeks entirely. The camera arrived and she mounted it above the front door, angled to catch the side of the house where he most often walked. On the 7th night after installation, Colt began growling at 1:14 a.m. She lay in the dark and waited. In the morning, she reviewed the footage with her hands shaking and her coffee going cold beside her laptop. The footage showed a man. He was tall, wearing a dark, heavy coat, a wool cap pulled low. He walked slowly along the side of the house with his hands in his pockets, completely calm, as though out for an evening stroll. At the bedroom window, he stopped. He stood there for 4 minutes and 22 seconds, she counted, facing the window. Then he turned and looked directly into the camera. He stood motionless for a moment, staring into the lens, before turning and walking back into the trees. The police took the footage seriously this time. They distributed the image. Nobody recognized him. No prints in any database matched the boots. Donna moved out the following week, breaking her lease and forfeiting her deposit. She drove to Fairbanks and stayed with her sister. 6 months later, out of a compulsion she couldn't quite explain, she called the Anchorage Police Department to ask if there had been any developments. The officer who answered told her that the house had been rented by a new tenant in March, a young woman living alone, and that the new tenant had reported a prowler twice in the past month, a tall man in a dark coat seen circling the property at night. He had not yet been identified. Donna never went back. To her knowledge, he was never caught. What she thinks about most, even now, is not the footsteps or the footage or the long sleepless nights with every light blazing. What she thinks about is the 4 minutes and 22 seconds he stood outside her window in the dark, perfectly still, while she lay on the other side of the wall, not knowing he was there. She thinks about what he was doing during those 4 minutes. She thinks there is a very good chance that he could. The new tenant stayed in the house for 3 months before she too broke her lease and left. The house sat empty for a long time after that. The landlord had trouble finding anyone willing to take it. People in the area had begun to talk. The house at the end of the gravel road where the trees came right up to the windows had a reputation now, though the man who gave it that reputation was still out there somewhere, patient, unhurried, entirely unafraid of being seen. A local journalist picked up the story briefly in 1998, publishing a short piece in an Anchorage paper. He interviewed Donna by phone. He interviewed the second tenant, who refused to give her name. He submitted a records request for the police reports and found 11 documented incidents spanning 2.5 years at that address. He was attempting to cross-reference similar reports from nearby neighborhoods when his editor killed the story for lack of new information. The journalist said later in an online forum that the thing that stayed with him wasn't the story itself. It was that when he'd gone to photograph the house, standing in the driveway in broad January daylight, he had had the overwhelming, physical, totally irrational sensation that someone was watching him in the trees. He left quickly. He did not go back. The house was eventually demolished in 2003 to make way for a small commercial development. The trees were cleared. The gravel road was paved. Whatever the man had wanted, whatever he had been looking for on those long, cold nights, he never found it, or at least, he never found it there. Whether he found it somewhere else is a question nobody has been able to answer.